Hey everyone, it's David here from Block Whisperers, and I've got a real treat for everybody today. I want to talk about survival in Vanilla Minecraft. You know, sometimes it's not very realistic, and we've been trying to create a version of survival which is ultra realistic. I don't know if anybody's ever played the mod TerraFirmaCraft. It is absolutely amazing, and it inspired us to start making something as similar as we can possibly get it, but in Vanilla Minecraft. So I'm calling this VanillaFirmaCraft. However, that might change its name further down the line once we've started developing it. We've made several modules, which I want to share the first of those modules with you today, and also introduce the realistic survival concept. So a few people have done quite a few things on this. And we want to do something a little bit different, okay? So the first part of this survival, this sort of realistic survival, is the ability to detect what biome a player's in. So that, and the reason we want to do that is because when we say, let's say a player's in the jungle, it's really hot in the jungle, everyone knows that. So if I'm up here in the jungle, you know, I should be really hot, you know, and realistically, I'm not going to be able to dig as fast in the heat. I'm more likely to get diseases, you know, and all sorts of other things that come with the heat, you know. Or if I'm in the mountains in the snow, I might dig fast enough. I might dig fast, but you know, I'll be really cold and I can't stay out in the cold for too long. So that's kind of what we're trying to create, and the first part of that is giving us the ability to detect what biome a player's in. And that's what I'm going to discuss today. But in the future videos, I'm going to discuss all the other modules that some we've done and some we haven't done yet. So I think the first thing to do is just explain how this works. Okay, so if I press tab now, you see my player name 7 Sigma. It's dark green at the moment, and that means I'm in an equatorial region. Now the two equatorial regions are savanna biome and jungle biome. It's going to be hot. When we start applying weather conditions, it's going to be hot. So I'm going to go down into the command block area now and just explain how this works. Okay, we've got a lot of command blocks here. We're in 1.9 snapshots, which really helps because we get to use these command blocks rather than just the originals. So the first thing is that we've got a hopper clock, and we've got a timer on that hopper clock using this command here. So block data, I've set the transfer cooldown to 200 ticks at the moment, just so that I could demonstrate it. You know, once if this was a real life server and it was all up and running, we would set that a lot bigger number, because we don't want that happening every 10 seconds. So to stop that happening now, I'm just going to add another 0 into there, just to slow down that clock so that we can talk through this. Right, where do we start? Okay, so we also use the tag system here. So each factor, and I will explain this, each factor's got its own player tag, and then based on those player tags, it puts a player in the team depending on the climate or the biome. I'll just talk through this, and then I think you will get the idea as I keep talking. So the first thing we need to do is remove all the player tags, because every time this runs, it's going to remove all the tags off the player. And just to show what tags you've got at the moment, is scoreboard, players, tag, me, and list. Okay, so ignore some of these tags because some aren't related to this biome selector, but you can see that there's no biome related tags at the moment. It's spring, I'm thirsty, I'm also dehydrated, and it's daytime. So those are the tags I've got at the moment. So they're nothing to do with this, okay? So all these get cleared. Then what we do is the only way I've been able to detect what biome a player's in is to spawn about 40 armor stands around the player, and then detect what's underneath each armor stand. And based on what those armor stands detect, is to make an assumption or make a best guess as to what biome the player's in. So let's say underneath the armor stands around the player is snow. We know that they're in a cold biome. It can't be any other way. If there's jungle leaves underneath an armor stand, we know they're in the jungle. If there's acacia leaves, we know they're in the savanna, etc., etc. If there's grass, but not jungle and not savanna, then we know they're in what we're going to call a temperate climate, a normal grassland type climate. Okay, so we've made several best guesses depending on what the armor stands detect. And it's not foolproof, you know, somebody could be in the desert and plant a jungle tree outside the house and it will detect them as jungle. But the vanilla game is limited in that way. There's no other way really of detecting what biome a player's in. Unless you can think of a better way of doing it, in which case please leave a comment and we'll have a look at that. So the first job is to spawn a load of armor stands. All these are exactly the same command. They're all executing to all players to summon an armor stand 2 blocks above them. The armor stand's going to have a tag of area marker and stand. It's going to be small, invisible, invulnerable, and it's going to be persistent, which means it won't despawn. So I think there's about 40 of those. So they just all spawn above the player, all of these blocks, and then what we do is we use the spread players command to spread the armor stands around randomly. So we're going to execute to all players to do the spread players command to within a 20 block radius to spread the armor stands at least 2 blocks apart. And you see we're spreading entities all with a tag of area marker and within a radius of 3 blocks. So what that does is all the armor stands spawn above the player, and then the spread players command spreads them all out from the player around a 20 block radius. Okay, so that's that stage. That we use these repeaters here to create a bit of a delay. So when all this is going, this delays this part, and then this one here sets a redstone block here to do these commands here. So the next stage to this is we want to give, depending on what the armor stands detect, we want to give certain tags to the players. Okay, that just turns the redstone block back to air. So this one, I'll go into the shelter in a minute because that's slightly different. So if you have a look at this one, so execute at entity with a tag of area marker with detecting -1 block below grass, and then if that's the case we want to do scoreboard players tag all players within a 25 block radius, and we want to add the tag of temperate. So if it detects grass, it's going to add a temperate tag to the player. Okay, and we're doing the same for everything else. So and these are all the same command. So execute into the armor stands with the area marker armor stands, and it's going to detect 1 block underneath if there's sand, and if there is, then it's going to do the command scoreboard players tag all players, and it's going to add the tag desert. Okay, and also it's going to do the same for red sand as well. So sand space 1 is red sand, and it's going to add the desert tag for red sand if you're in a mesa biome. We've got 2 for the snowy climate, so we've got a snow layer, and with a snow layer it's not 1 block below, it's on the same level because the player walks through the snow layer. And we do scoreboard players tag all players within a radius of 25. We're going to add the cold tag, and we're also going to add the cold tag if it's just snow, so a snow block underneath the player, underneath the armor stand, sorry. Okay, and then next we go to this command, and this is jungle leaves. So if it detects jungle leaves under any of the armor stands, it's going to add the equatorial tag. And it's also going to do the same for savanna as well. Leaves 2, space 0 is acacia leaves. So that's going to add the tag equatorial as well. And then once we've added all the tags to the player, we're going to kill off the armor stands because we don't need them anymore. And then finally, the last stage of this is putting people into the teams depending on what tags they've got. So now all the players are tagged up, and depending on the tags, we're going to stick them in teams. And that's what changes the colour of the player name. And then we can start adding cool effects and things to people in certain teams, which is what I spoke about at the start of the video. So stage 8, we're putting people in teams. So this is where we start using nested execute tags. Okay, so we're going to execute to all players with a tag of desert, and then that's also going to execute to the nearest player. So it's going to execute to all players with desert, and then that's then going to execute to the nearest player that's not got a temperate tag, and then also not got a cold tag and not got an equatorial tag. And then if all those conditions are met, it's going to put them in Team Desert. So Team Desert is anybody who's got a tag of desert but none of the other tags. So if there's sand but nothing else. The next one is for temperate. So all players with a tag of temperate and also not cold and also not equatorial and also and also not equatorial, join Team Temperate. And then the last two, there's one for equatorial. So the commands are getting shorter because we're slowly weeding out the different conditions. So we're going to execute to all players with equatorial and not cold, because even if it's jungle but there's snow on the ground, we're going to assume they're cold. And we're going to put those in Team Equatorial. And then lastly, the cold team, so just all players with a tag of cold, we're going to join cold. Because if there's snow on the ground, it trumps everything else. So now what we've done is we've spawned all the armor stands, we've tagged the players up depending on what the armor stands detect, and then depending on what tags players have got, we've put them into teams. So let's just show that working in action, shall we? Okay, so here I am. I've picked a corner of the map that's just got sand, nothing else. So this should put me in yellow because it thinks I'm in the desert, which is correct. One thing you'll notice is that if you're around water, you will hear the armor stands dropping, which is a bit unfortunate, but there's no other way around it. So what I'll do now is I'll just fly over to this jungle part and you'll be able to see that tag change. Okay, so here I am, just over the jungle leaves. And there you go, I've gone to dark green because the armor stands have detected jungle. So I'm wondering if I can find some grass on its own here, so you can see what happens with the grass. Okay, there's some grass here, and I'm not close enough to the jungle, I don't think, for it to detect it. There you go, so I've gone light green, so it thinks I'm in a temperate biome now. So you can see how the detector works, but it's going to be really useful for us to start to detect what kind of weather patterns or temperatures we're going to apply to players. Again, you know, it works with the snow blocks and snow layers as well. So if I just stick a few of these down, hopefully. There you go, it's gone blue, so it thinks I'm in a cold climate now. So as I said, you can cheat this, but it's not in the spirit of the realistic survival that we're trying to create. And I think anybody who's played something like TerraFirmaCraft will understand that players will actually want to play realistic. The other part of this biome detector is the ability to detect when a player's in shelter, because what we wanted to do was cancel out any negative weather effects when the player goes into shelter. So it's a really hot day here. I'm in sand. It thinks I'm in the desert because I'm not close enough to those jungle trees. But If you look at my player tags, so if I do scoreboard players tag at plist, you'll see the only weather related or biome related stuff at the moment is the fact that it's night time and I'm in the desert. So it's detected I'm in desert. Oh, not now, it's just reran again. So you see I've got equatorial tag and I'm in the equatorial team because it's detected the jungle tree. So if I go underneath the shelter and that runs again, I'll just do that. There you go. So I've got a tag of shelter. So now we can start cancelling effects to any player with a tag of shelter. And if I move out of that shelter, I've still got it at the moment. Just wait for it to rerun. There you go, and the shelter tag's disappeared. I've moved out of shelter. How is the shelter done? Let's have a look how we do the shelter. Oh, you see the calendar's just popped up on the bottom left there. That's going to be for another video. So the shelter is a little bit like the armor stand spawning around to detect the biome. The only difference is for the shelter, we're spawning 2 armor stands. So one armor stand is going to be spawned in the player's position, and the other armor stand is going to be spawned above the player in a way that it's falling. So if let's say I'm stood underneath this log, and I've spawned an armor stand here where I am now, and I've spawned one 8 blocks in the air. So the other armor stand is spawned somewhere here, and it falls onto this log because I'm stood underneath this log. So these 2 armor stands aren't going to be next to each other. And it works exactly like that. So if the 2 armor stands don't end up next to each other, then it knows I'm in shelter. I'm underneath a block somewhere. If the armor stands fall and do touch each other, then it knows that I'm not in shelter. And that's exactly how it works. So if you look at the first 2 spawn of armor stands here, the first 2 blocks, one is spawning an armor stand 8 blocks above, and we call that one shelter top, or we tag it with shelter top. And then if you look at the second one, we're also spawning another armor stand in the same position as the player, but it's called shelter bottom. So the shelter top will fall, and if it meets shelter bottom, then it knows you're not in shelter. So one of these blocks is for the actual shelter part, which is this one. So it's a nested execute command, so executing to the armor stand with the name of shelter top, which then executes to an armor stand with a tag of shelter bottom within a radius of 10 and not within a radius of 2. So outside of a radius of 2 but not further than a radius of 10. If that condition is met, then it does the command scoreboard players, nearest player within 10 blocks or within a radius of 10, add the shelter tag. So that's how that works. So that's a brief overview, guys. I appreciate it's a lot to take in a short space of time. So if you have got any questions, please leave a comment. What I will do is when we finish developing this world, and when we finish developing all the realistic elements of this ultra real survival, or vanilla firmacraft, whatever you want to call it, I will put the world download on our website to download. So any questions, let me know. Please subscribe to the channel because every subscriber helps us. You know, we want to get our message out there as much as possible, and you know, we really like you guys making suggestions, telling us what doesn't work, what works, and yeah, we're doing it for you guys. So subscribe to the channel, like the video, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.